So, as I said before, the next claim to deal with is that this land seen at the north end of the Isle of Man occupies too much distance here to be accounted for by the hills around the village of Bride. Now, this is a panorama that was assembled by a number of people. Ranty, Anthony's friend, I think put it together originally. It has been amended and improved until everybody looking at it, I think, is now quite happy that it is a pretty accurate panorama. It's put together with still frames from Anthony's second video, as far as I understand it. It's been enhanced in photographic software to bring out various features and has done a pretty good job. And we will consider that enhancement process a little bit later on. I don't know exactly how it was done, but not to worry. It won't affect what I have to say. So we can zoom in a little bit here and see what the panorama actually shows. Unfortunately, the tops of these hills, Snaefell here and the North Brule here, are obscured by cloud, which would be useful later on, but not to worry. And we have quite a lot of detail. Certain buildings could be made out and certain other features. The land extends all the way down to this point here on the left-hand side, and if we scroll back across to the right-hand side, here is the area that Anthony misidentified as the end of the Isle of Man, and here is the land that he can see to the north of that. And his current claim is that part of this is the Isle of Man and part of it is Ireland or Scotland. Again, as I said at the beginning of this video, these videos dealing with his claims, he's constantly altering those claims and modifying those claims as each one gets discredited or debunked. He shifts to a new claim or a different claim. But the particular claim here is that this land occupies too much of the total image to be accounted for by the low range of hills around Bride. Now, that's a claim that can actually be dealt with, and the way that I can deal with that claim then provides a lot of additional information that deals with other claims. So this video might be a little bit long as I explain how that works. So I've taken this this panorama and I've placed it into Paint. And you can ignore the writing and the lines and the arrows just for the moment. What I've done is I've gone to the leftmost point of the land there and to the rightmost point of the land there, and I've cropped the image. Now, Paint gives you a nice little ruler which sort of measures pixels or something, okay? So starting at the left, we're at 0, and the rightmost point of the image goes to 5,961 pixels. I made the image slightly less wide in terms of pixels, but that's how this image actually appears on the ruler. I did have it at twice the number of pixels, and that meant it was difficult to see it all on one screen because it went over 11,000 off to the right hand side, and I couldn't say it just is easier doing it this way. Now, the really good thing about this is we can set this end as being 100%. So the North Land's End that I've called it here, I'll just zoom in a bit. We can see this. So now looking at some of the red arrows, the North Land's End is at 5,961, and that's 100% on our scale. And the South Land's End is at 0 and is at 0%. The arrow isn't right on the edge because I can't get it right on the edge, but the land begins right on the edge of at 0 pixels. Now, there are a couple of features that everybody has acknowledged are correct. So in the middle here, or not the middle, not the very middle, but in the central part of the picture, there is a bright spot on the Isle of Man, which people accept is the Morgold or Margold lighthouse. And we can zoom in a little bit more and you can see that feature. We can measure the number of pixels to that point and find that it is 38.47% of the length of the whole image. The other point, I was going to use this point because I think I know where it is, but other people do not acknowledge that. So the other point I used to begin with was this sandy cliff point here and the left-handmost part of that. Now, the arrow doesn't point exactly to it, but it's just to give you an indication of what I'm talking about. And if you do put the cursor right on the edge, you get to, well, 5,275 is what I've actually recorded. And that is 88.65% of the distance along the whole image. Now we can use those percentages. We can go to Google Earth. Let's take off that. We'll take away we may return to these at some point. Okay, take away those pins and we'll zoom out. I've drawn a line which extends from in the sea beyond the Isle of Man and passes through the Morgold Lighthouse, which is here, to the cliff top where Anthony took his video here. You can see if we zoom in that it does indeed go pretty much, it's just very, very slightly to the left of the lighthouse, but it's pretty accurately to the lighthouse at the scales that we're interested in. And I've done the same thing with the sandy cliff at the top of the image here. You can see these sandy cliffs, and I haven't gone right to the sort of very end of it. I've gone to sort of highish point on this cliff, the area where it's likely to be seen. Again, the difference in distance here, it's going to be a slight margin of error, but not very much. Now, because we know that the Morgold Lighthouse is at 38, just go back to it to get it right, at 38.47% of the total image here. And we know that the sandy cliff is at 88.65. We know the percentage of the image that lies between the two of them. And using that as a basis, we can calculate where 100% would be, would you mark the point where this land ends here? So we can calculate where should 100% of that be. And I've already done this, so we'll just get the, yes. This is where 100% would be. And though this marks where the land is, northmost bit of land that can be seen in Anthony's video. I'm not going to go through the calculation because it would take too long. But essentially, what you have to do is mark a line which is pretty much perpendicular to the field of view here. And the center of the field of view is about here. And the proportion, this will always be the percentage which works out at around 50%. It will always be the percentage, this distance between the Sandy Cliff and the Moorgold Lighthouse. And it doesn't matter whether your perpendicular is marked here, or at any point along these lines. This represents 50%. This point, this distance represents 50%. This is at 38.47% or whatever it was. This is at 88.65% of the total width. And so this is the northernmost point, which is 100%. Cannot be anywhere else because the points that we're using for reference here, the original start point, the viewpoint, the Moorgold Lighthouse, and the Sandy Cliff are fixed points that we have, and we have the percentage difference taken from Anthony Riley's own video. This is not something I have created. This is simply translating the panorama from Anthony Riley's own video onto Google Earth. This is what it shows. Now, the 100% point line of sight runs along here. And if we replace, if I can find it again, our Ordnance Survey map and zoom in, we find that a 100% line runs along here. There is an 80 meter, 70, 60, and it's cutting across at between 50 and 60. Now, as I said, there's going to be a small margin of error here. The lower point here is also at about a 60 meter height. Maybe it should be slightly different, but you can see that the range of hills pretty much occupies the full distance between these points, between the Sandy Cliff and 100% of Anthony Riley's own image. And allowing for a small margin of error is exactly where these lines are placed. I think that pretty conclusively shows that indeed these hills can account for all the land that is seen in Anthony's video. The village of Bride itself is too low, much of it is too low in elevation to be seen in the image, in the panorama. But part of it can in fact be seen. And people have identified some of these light pixels here. They are not lights on in buildings, they are sunlight reflected from buildings. The video is taken during the day. It simply appears dark because of the enhancements that have been carried out. The low point is to the left of Bride, and that also agrees with what we see on Google Earth. The low point is here and would appear from our viewpoint to be to the left of Bride. And these buildings in this area, and possibly some of these buildings here as well, are at a high enough elevation to be seen in Anthony's video. And they are the ones that we can see. The other buildings further down here are possibly not visible in Anthony's video. This being likely to be the village of Bride here, and this likely to be the low point here, fits perfectly with where we have the sandy cliff line marked and where we have the 100% line marked, and the land between all above 80 meters, or pretty much all above 80 meters, tapering down from this point to here, but that's only a very small distance, accounts for all the land that can be seen. Now, this method of allocating where various points are on Google Earth to points that are visible on this panorama taken from Anthony's own video. We will use this panorama to identify certain features, and using the same method of calculating the percentage distance along the panorama in pixels first, and then converting that onto Google Earth and a location between our 100% line, and we'll add our 0% line. I'll do that first. This will form the basis of dealing with several subsequent claims that have been made about the Isle of Man and Ireland and what can be seen. But here we've dealt with the claim that the land here cannot be accounted for by the low hills around Bride. And they clearly can. The limit of the land seen on the video is this top red line here. The sandy cliff marks the bottom of the end of the low range of hills and is seen clearly in the panorama. And all the land in between is this range of hills up to 96 meters above sea level, and in several places above 90 meters above sea level. And as we've seen, that's absolutely the right height for them to be visible from Anthony's viewpoint on the cliffs near St. Bees.